Hello all, this is Tejasvi, Assistant Professor, Department of English SF, Nirmala College for Women, Coimbatore. Today, in this presentation, we'll be dealing about the poem Dover Beach, written by one of the most predominant poet of the Victorian era, Matthew Arnold. Let's get into the poem in detail.
In order to understand a poem or any sort of text, you will first need to know about the era in which it was written. Let's now look into Victorian period in general. It was Queen Victoria who ruled England from 1837 to 1901 for about 64 years. Her reign was considered to be a prosperous period due to industrialization. It also witnessed drastic changes as the Queen brought upgradation in the terms of social, political, and in technology. This era has also experienced lot many developments and extended its colonialism. It was called the Age of Democracy as the reform bills were passed that favored the middle class people. Due to the discoveries and inventions in science and technology, there were conflicts between science and religion, and hence the pessimism existed. As we all know, Victorian England was witnessing the phase of loss in faith and questioning of God's existence. It was Matthew Arnold who was very much concerned about rapid progress happened because of the industrialization, which led him to write this poem. In this video, we'll be enlightened about how poetry reflected Victorian England, Arnold's biography, and covering a small analysis of the first two stanzas of the poem Dover Beach. The poetry in Victorian period. The poets of Victorian period, through their poems, praised human pursuits and knowledge. They used imagery and sensory devices vividly to express their abstract sense of religious conflicts. While poets like Matthew Arnold focused on religious themes, certain other poets focused on nature and romance. Due to the radical change of likings between romanticized poetry and heroic poetry, there were two groups in poetry, namely High Victorian poetry and Pre-Raphaelite poetry, where the former one dealt with the classical themes and latter dealt with simplicity. A successful accomplishment of this period was the emergence of female poets. As in olden days, female poets or writers wrote under anonymous name. They did not seem to have owned their shine. Some of the marked poets of this period includes Alfred Lord Tennyson, Robert Browning, Elizabeth Barrett Browning, Matthew Arnold, Oscar Wilde, Christina Rossetti, and Bronte sisters. Now, how do we bring in the characteristics of Victorian poetry? The characteristics of Victorian poetry can thus be defined by the themes of realism, the poems focusing on masses, pessimism, science and technology, the questioning to God, morality, and the dramatic monologue. Matthew Arnold, born on December 24, 1822 in England. He was a Victorian poet, a literary and a social critic. He got educated in a rugby school and graduated from Oxford in the year of 1844. he is well known for his classical criticism on the social cultural matters of England. He influences many writers such as William Wordsworth, John Keats, Goethe, Saint Beuve, and Cardinal Newman, and he got influenced by T.S. Eliot, Lionel Trilling, Harold, and many other writers. Now moving on to the first stanza of the poem, let me read it for you. The sea is calm tonight, the tide is full, the moon lies fair upon the straits, on the French coast, the light gleams and is gone. The cliffs of England stand glimmering and vast, out in the tranquil bay. Come to the window, sweet is the night air, only from the long line of spray where the sea meets the moon-blanched land. Listen, you hear the grating roar of pebbles which the wave draws back and fling at their return. Up the high strand begin and cease, and then again begin with tremulous cadence slow, and bring the eternal note of sadness in. Dover is a place located in England. Now imagine the speaker or the poet himself is sitting along with his loved one, watching over the sea and the English Channel near the Dover or the French coast. This beach seems to be calm and quiet where the tide is full. The moon stands fair and white that you could see falling behind the French coast. If we could comprehend the poet's state of mind, one could easily relate the fourth lines of the stanza to that of faith, right? The gleams and is gone. So he's comparing it to that of a faith. The moon is compared to that of faith, like how faith is just fading away from the soul of human. Now that the moon has gone down, he calls upon his love. He calls upon his loved one to join him, looking at the pebbles that creates a roaring noises clashing among each other. So let's say pebbles as a metaphor of humans, right? So having lost faith in God or losing order and morality, or so to say introduced to scientific inventions, human beings are now driven mad. They fight among themselves and with their selves as to follow which path. They are in a state of mind that they don't know which path they have to follow. The path of God or the path of science. So they are skeptic about it. A crisis of faith has triggered Arnold here to express his alienation that his land feels no more like his own. So with these words, so that is, this brings in the eternal note of sadness to the world. So he registered the disappointment of the world here. Now let's move on to the second. Moving on to the second stanza. Sophocles long ago heard it on Aegean, and it brought into his mind the turbid ebb and flow of human misery. To your right, you can find Sophocles, and this is how he used to look. They claim he was a sports person, and he was a Greek tragedian who was acknowledged as the greatest playwright of the Golden Age. So basically he has written more than 120 plays, and he devoted himself to the service of state, art and public. Now coming to the poem back again, the poet brings down the emotion of another man who would have felt the same way like how Arnold feels looking at Dover Beach. The stanza seems to look quite comprehensible, right? So just like how Arnold is witnessing the emotion of skepticism, maybe Sophocles would have also felt this kind of emotion while he was on the Aegean Sea's coast, looking at the northern sea, they say. And looking at this northern sea, maybe Sophocles would have got the idea to write about the human sufferings. That is what they say. He has written the turbid ebb and flow of human misery. He was inspired by that emotion and he wanted to write about the sufferings of human beings, they say. So that is what. So maybe Sophocles would have had the same turmoil in the Aegean Sea many years ago that led him to write a play on human misery. Yes, he would have pictured about the human suffering like the pebbles. Okay, a comparison again here, or a metaphor we could state. Like he would have pictured about the human sufferings like a pebble, or the pebbles drawn in and out, and he could hear it. So he could literally hear it, the clashing of the pebbles, that he could hear it from the distant northern sea, they claim.
I hope this video was informative to you. Thank you.